You're listening to the Overcast. Sunshine on a cloudy day. Part of the Oversoul Gaming channel. Hello there, everyone, and welcome to the Overcast, your joke-making, fun-having pop culture podcast. I am your host, Justin, aka Oversoul.
And I am your co-host, Nick, aka the Vaping Queen. Wow, words are hard today.
Yes, and like always, we're bringing you sunshine and illiteracy on a cloudy day. It actually has been kind of sunny lately. The weather's been really nice for it being winter. I can't lie.
Yeah. No, it's the last couple of days. It's today not so much because it was a little cold out, but yesterday, oh my God, it was. Oh.
Yes. Man. So tell me,
nice.
Because as usual, it feels like, it's been a couple of weeks because it has. So, tell me, how have you been enjoying these nice days lately and, well, all your days lately?
Spending it inside, actually.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, I've become a bit of a hermit.
Hey, you know what? Nothing wrong with that.
Nah, no, definitely not.
But, what's new? Anything worth mentioning?
I was gonna say, as of this recording, it's been maybe about a week or so now, maybe 2 weeks since Sarah had, since she renewed her, re-upped her, season tickets for the Iowa Wild. And this time around, she has added me for prepping for my eventual move out to Iowa once I'm able to transfer with my job. So we'll have tickets to each and every game.
Oh wow!
And with the package that she did, we each of us, y'all know I'm an Ice Hogs fan. I told her I will wear it. It'll be rare, but I will wear it. With the package that she got the VIP, the whole season season tickets. Her and I are each getting a custom Iowa Wild jersey.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I can't imagine that season passes are cheap, so they should definitely throw something extra in there for sure.
They're about $150 a month, I think. That's $150 a month, and I am like helping her out with part of it as well, since she added me to it.
I was gonna say, woo, $150 a month, big woof.
Right, dude. It's
like what Comcast charges for good internet.
Right, dude. I'm excited.
Anything else?
Nothing that work's been pretty decent. I just got a Bluetooth speaker, so instead of listening to music or podcasts on my Bluetooth on my AirPods, what I've been doing is I have this Bluetooth speaker that it's basically the size of a really tall pop can.
Okay.
And what I do is I put it in my hoodie pocket and listen to music while I'm working, and I've actually been working a lot quicker and sufficient since switching to the speaker.
Fair enough. All I know is I find I focus on the task I'm doing better if I'm listening to a podcast than with music lately. Music is whew, music has become more of a relaxed time thing for me lately than it has a work time thing for me. I find that if
Mm-hmm.
I'm working or doing chores, I'm using that time to catch up on my backlog of shows. Like if I'm doing the dishes, I'm watching a show at the same time. Oh, but like I also find that the podcasts, for some reason, pass the time faster than music does for me, and I think it's because so many of them run upwards of like 30 minutes to 2.5 hours. So
Mm-hmm.
it's that's probably why, because they are passing a lot of time. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that's yeah, yeah. But I can also understand how some people, like, when you're listening to a podcast, you are trying to focus on the words they're saying, and I can understand how for
Mm-hmm.
some people it could be difficult to do that and try to communicate with a coworker or whatever. But if you're working a mostly independent job, like when I was doing janitorial stuff, then it's that's fine at that point.
Yeah, no, they've had been having me instead of in like the singular truck. They've had me working two different trucks that are like right next to each other. Same amount of work that it was in the singular truck, but I've been for the most part been working by myself.
Okay, yeah. But like, yeah, when I was a janitor, I was like mostly by myself in like there would be sections of the night, because there was four of us in that building total, but there would be some parts of the night where I wouldn't see anyone for hours,
Damn.
because like
Okay.
the building was so big and we were all in our own areas, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, remember I was like cleaning locker rooms and stuff a lot too, so it was a very very quiet job for me. And of course, I'm sitting here cleaning empty, dark locker rooms in the middle of the night and an empty school while listening to a podcast review horror movies. Because that's just the kind of person I am.
Right.
I like to live on the edge.
Mm-hmm.
No, no, I'm not that easily spooked by stuff. I recently applied for a janitorial job at a hospital for third shift.
Oh, there you
Uh,
go.
so clearly, yeah, waiting to hear back from them, see how that goes. But otherwise, yeah, because the job I'm currently working isn't giving anyone any hours really, and they're not enough to pay the bills anyway. They are.
Right.
They cut everyone's hours way too much because they didn't make the amount of money they thought they were gonna make. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, you'll have
but
to let me know how that goes with the whole hospital janitor thing.
yeah, yeah. I'm hoping it goes through, but we'll see. Yeah, I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket though. There are other places I'm looking into as well. So
There you go.
um, kind of hoping for that one, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Uh, Otherwise, I've just been filling the void by I don't know. There haven't been a lot of. I mean, it's just now February at the time of recording this, and there haven't been a lot of big new releases that have come out this year so far in terms of much of anything really,
Right.
media in general, not just games. But I've been spending some time catching up on ye old backlog and doing a little bit of nostalgia diving. So I
Mm-hmm.
like recently went back and replayed all the Batman Arkham games. Just got the itch for it and decided to do that. And man, they still hold up. I tell you what, they still do. Um,
I believe
I'll
it.
dive into I'll dive into them more in the topic because I forgot to mention to folks, by the way. Yeah, this episode's topic is going to be, if you couldn't tell by the title, the greatest stories ever told. We're going to be talking about what both we and the general public consider to be some of the absolute best narratives in different forms of media, and what makes them so good,
Yeah.
So this it won't just be talking about stuff that's like popular just because it's because it is or whatever, but things that really went above and beyond with the storytelling, or like revolutionized storytelling in a way. So, we'll be talking about that. But yeah, that's what I've been up to mostly. Not really. Yeah, I can't think of anything particularly new or interesting that's happened lately. So
There.
I haven't really seen or hung out with anyone lately, although I do believe I will be seeing you again here soon within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, yeah. I think we're Sarah and I, when she comes into town on Sunday, we're gonna try and stop by uh sometime during the day on Monday, the 12th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and then after I finished the Arkham games, I still had a bit of the Batman bug, and part of it too was I was replaying them because I was trying to refresh my memory of the story for the Suicide Squad game that came out today, at the time of recording this, but because it is in that universe, but after I finished them, I was still itching for a little more Batman, so like I went on I think it was Amazon Prime and started
Oh,
watching the Batman animated series, the original one from the 90s. Uh
okay.
that and it still holds up to me. It is some of the best performances of Batman and Joker, as, Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, which
Mm,
are the same ones who voiced them in the Batman Arkham games, so that's probably another reason why it's so good. Um
mm.
so yeah. Uh, so I went back and started watching that from the beginning. They got pretty much all the episodes on both Amazon Prime and HBO Max. So
There you
decided
go.
to go back and check it out. And yeah, man, it's a real nostalgia trip. I've been enjoying
Okay.
it so far. But yeah. Um
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, that pretty much covers it. I haven't really had a whole lot going on. Just those things. I think yeah, still working on my replay of the. Well, I'm almost done with my replay of the Remedy uh games too. Like I'm finishing up my replay of Control, and then
There you go.
since I just played Alan Wake 2, I'm not going to replay that one again
Right.
already, but.
I was
Like
gonna say.
I've already played it 3 times. I played it once initially. I played it once for recording my replay, and then I played through the final draft mode as well to get all the extra content. So,
Right.
um, um, that's like I beat that game. I've beaten that game a full 3 times, and it came out last October. So
Okay.
yeah. I'm good on any more now for now, but they did recently update that game. They added an update patch that lets you do level select now, so
Mm.
anyone. And the whole reason they added it is because people were begging them to add it so that they could all go back and replay the Old Gods of Asgard level with the musical performance, because that's what it is. That's what it's for. Because people kept saying, I have a separate save file at the beginning of that level just so I can go back and replay it a bunch.
Right.
So. So yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah. And then, well, earlier today, well, I'll talk about it a little bit later, but earlier today I did a live stream that you watched,
Yes.
that I enjoyed. And I know you've been watching my playthrough of Bendy and the Dark Revival. I don't think
Yes.
you've seen the latest, I don't think you've seen the latest episode yet, but I know
Not
you've been
yet.
watching it.
Not yet. No, I have not watched the fifth episode yet. Not quite yet. I will probably watch
I,
that tomorrow before I go to work.
I put out the funniest clip from that episode publicly, by the way, the one where the cat has a reaction to my jump scare. It was great. Um, I missed that cat, Luna. She was great, but she found her forever home now, so
Yeah.
I'm happy for that, Um, but yeah, some great jump scare reactions in that game. So, um, all right. Well, yeah, that more or less does it for the life updates. Then seems like neither one of us had a whole lot going on lately,
No, no,
but
no, not really.
it do be like that sometimes, though.
Yeah.
It do. All right then. Well, off to the media corner then.
Yes.
Welcome everyone to the Media Corner. Extra, extra, read all about it. The place reserved for news, reviews, and recommendations. And so, I believe we have a little bit of all three today, and Nick here is gonna go first.
Yes, I'm gonna rip off the Band-Aid first, and I'm gonna talk about Ted.
Oh,
I finished Ted over in the last few. Maybe I think it was last week that I finished it.
just to be clear, you mean
I
the series on Peacock, not the old movie.
Yes, the show on Peacock. I liked it, but I have some caveats. I see what you mean when you said that there's a lot of distasteful jokes in it that wouldn't hold up to today's society. There was a lot of like cringe. There was a lot of cringe in this show, like just from the jokes.
Yeah, it's very cringe. I don't even think it's so much about the tastelessness of some of the jokes. It's just the fact that they don't land. It would be better if the jokes actually landed, but they don't land. Is the problem.
Right. See now,
it's very juvenile.
I went into this
and not in the not in the South Park way where it can get away with it. It's like it's like uncomfortable to watch at times.
Yes. But it is classic.
The dad is a bleeding asshole. Like
a racist, a bigot, and an asshole.
And I love Scott Grimes. That's the voice of Steve from American Dad, by the way. He's also in the Orville as one of the crew members. But, whoo, man, he is a bad person in this show. Like, I could see how this show would be hard to watch for someone who's been through domestic abuse, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. There were some jokes that landed. There was the word I'm looking for. Quick-witted jokes.
Yes.
The quick-witted jokes are the ones that made me laugh the most.
Agree. Yeah, or like the overt sarcasm stuff. You know?
Yes, that. Yeah. Yes.
That stuff, but like blowing on a Nintendo cartridge and being like, "Oh, you're going to make some guy very happy someday." That's just juvenile to me.
No. There was a lot of sexist jokes in this. Oh man, like I had to go into this with low expectations because you had said like it might not be it's like you're a huge Seth MacFarlane fan, but this might be the one thing that he put out that you don't like.
Yeah,
but I will say I did finish it. There was a character. So the dad. He does get a redemption. So I will say that there is a lot of character development in this.
Is it a well-deserved and fleshed out redemption arc though, like Bakugo and My Hero, where it's like you've been with him for a long enough time to see him grow as a character? Is this just some kind of like shoehorned, they learn a lesson at the end of the episode and now they're suddenly a good guy sitcom bullshit? You know?
I don't know.
The next episode they're an asshole again.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. No one ever actually learns anything in these shows, and I think that's part of the point. I think like there's always a lesson to be told, like Family Guy though, but they hit the magic reset button every episode and things just go back to the status quo in the next one. So I think what the show's problem is that it's Family Guy humor in a live action setting, and that doesn't work. It only work, that kind of humor only works in animation because there's the wall of it being animated between you and them, but this kind of shit being shown to you with real people kind of makes it uncomfortable and hard to watch in some areas. You know, like even the jokes that are meant to be cutaway jokes, like the one where the the niece is accidentally sitting in on the colonoscopy and hearing all the stuff the doctors are saying. That would be a good Family Guy cutaway. But in this show, it feels like it just detracts from the main narrative. you know,
Yeah.
it
I
kind of feels like a distraction and like a nonsensical thing rather than a. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think adult animation humor works in a live action setting. Obviously it's
no,
supposed to be
I
a parody of sitcoms, but
mhm.
I don't know.
I I went into it looking at the cutaway scenes as a Seth MacFarlane signature.
yeah,
That's basically one of the best things. He's good at the cutaway scenes and the toilet humor.
yeah. Well, that's actually see that's the thing though. If you haven't seen the Orville, you wouldn't know, but like since I've seen what Seth MacFarlane can do at his best, I've seen the Orville, I've seen A Million Ways to Die in the West. I think these are examples of him at his top, at the peak of his talent. And
Mm-hmm.
the Orville is truly one of the best TV shows I've ever seen, and it's got some great story beats, some great stuff about like there's some great social commentary up in there. There's a whole episode about like gender identity stuff and stuff like that.
Uh huh.
And he's got some really good messages in the show. There's one episode that's basically like a Black Mirror episode about a whole planet where the society is based off of, popularity. And if you're not
Ooh,
popular enough, you get executed, that kind of shit.
interesting.
Yeah, I've seen the Orville, so I know that Seth MacFarlane is capable of greatness. So this show feels like a huge step down compared to that for me.
That
Like
makes
a
sense.
huge a huge step down for him.
Makes
But
sense.
yeah, what are some of your other thoughts on it though? See, you finished the show, I haven't, so you got more context than me.
I don't really have much else on it. Uh, I'm gonna give my review. I'm gonna give my rating.
Okay.
I'm gonna rate this as 7.5. Like
Okay.
I like it, but there's a lot of there's a lot of shit in this show that if this doesn't cancel Seth MacFarlane, I don't know what will.
To be honest with you, I genuinely don't think enough people care about this show for that to even happen. Like, I think
That's fair.
most people probably don't even know it exists.
Like the probably the people that know it exists are like the diehard Seth MacFarlane fans,
Yeah, and a lot of the
like you and
advertisement
I.
this should not come as a surprise to anyone because the internet is, of course, the internet. But a lot of the advertisements I've seen for it, a lot of the comments I've seen on it are, from like edgy people that are like, haha, now this is comedy, snowflakes don't apply, this isn't meant for
Yeah,
sensitive people, shit like that. I'm like, yeah,
yeah,
so I wonder if maybe the demographic is edgy teenagers for this show
probably,
because
probably, yeah,
the two main characters are basically edgy teenagers. So
yeah, pretty much.
yeah. So I know it's supposed to be like commentary on 90s sitcoms and all that, but the show doesn't feel as smart as it thinks it's being. It really doesn't.
Right.
It's not. The show thinks it's smarter than it is, and it doesn't come across like biting satire like South Park does. It just comes across like lazy, low effort garbage to me,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
you know. Um I'm glad that you might actually have liked it more than I do. I still haven't finished it yet, to be fair, but also that's got to be the lowest rating that you've given to anything on this show so far,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
is genuinely surprising coming from the guy who gave me guff for only giving Spider-Man 2 a 9 out of 10. Like, that's surprising. But you see, I guess now you can see how you can like something and still notice its flaws at the same time.
Yeah, dude, this show's got a lot of them, but I still like it.
Yeah, and see, that's fine. Final Fantasy 13 has a lot of flaws, and I still like it. I would probably rate that game a 7 out of 10, but it's still in my top 5 Final Fantasy games.
There you go.
So, sometimes it pays to be a little nuanced. Sometimes you gotta set aside
Yeah.
your personal taste for the sake of being a little objective. Reviews are supposed to be a mix of objective facts and subjective taste together,
Mm-hmm.
kind of measuring both to come up with a fair score. So, and I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head with Ted there. So,
Yeah.
um, well, um, my first thing isn't exactly the greatest bit of news, a little bit of sadness, but it's worth mentioning. It was announced, I want to say earlier today, that
Mm-hmm.
the prolific actor Carl Weathers, known for his roles in movies like Rocky, Predator, and his role in The Mandalorian, has passed away sadly at the age of 76.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he also had roles in Happy Gilmore, Arrested Development, and Toy Story 4.
He
In fact,
was in Happy Gilmore, wasn't he?
yeah, I'm pretty sure he was the guy with the fake hand.
He was Chubbs.
Yep,
He was
yep.
Chubbs.
He passed away on
Oh,
Thursday, February 1st. His family told Deadline in a statement. Said,
man,
we,
that's
we are we are deeply saddened to announce the passing of Carl Weathers. He died peacefully in his sleep on Thursday, February 1st, 2024. Carl was an exceptional human being who lived an extraordinary life through his contributions to film, television, the arts, and sports. He has left an indelible mark and is recognized worldwide and across generations. He was a beloved brother, father, grandfather, partner, and friend.
damn.
He was nominated for an Emmy in his role in The Mandalorian.
I saw that. Man, that is sad.
Yep, another um another great actor sadly gone.
Mm-hmm.
Up there with the likes of Lance Reddick and Andre Mann. This one hurts too, just like Andre Bauer not that long ago.
Yeah. Dude, I remember when Robin Williams passed. Like, dude, I cried.
Oh yeah, there's definitely been some sad, disappointing ones. Betty White was a big one,
Bra- yeah, Betty White was a huge one.
but man, Carl Weathers, yeah, he was a legend. We lost another legend, but it's good to know. As sad as it is, though, 76 still really isn't that old, considering some people live to be 100.
Yeah.
Um, but it's good to know that he went peacefully in his sleep, at least. I
Yeah.
do. That does make me wonder if maybe he did have maybe some kind of health problem or something, though, because I don't.
Yeah.
You don't often hear of someone passing away of natural causes at 76. It's usually like because of some kind of underlying health issue. But it's good
Yeah.
to know that he went peacefully at least.
Yeah. That
So
is comforting.
yes, but yeah, there's not. I mean, that's that news. There's not really a whole lot more I can say about it. So what else do you have for us?
I am going to talk a little bit. This is my recommendation. I'm gonna save my other review for last.
Okay,
Um, Sarah and I have been playing a lot of Pokemon Violet lately. She's been helping me with the leveling up my Pokemon. We've been running around doing raids. I've beaten 5 gym leaders so far. I've
nice,
beaten all of the did all of the Titan Pokemon, so I've fully upgraded Miraidon, and with well, obviously you can ride him around like a motorcycle, but or a bike that has the ability to swim, climb, jump, and glide.
nice.
It's fucking awesome, dude.
Wow,
But
wow.
yeah,
That series has come a long way.
it really has. Like, dude, this is so. I she also recently picked up Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu. I've played a little bit of it. I haven't gotten too far into it, but I also recently started playing was it um new Pokemon Snap?
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But no, more a little more on Pokemon Violet. Um I'm really liking this. Like I find myself I find myself just like wanting just instead of turning on my PlayStation and finding a different like game on my PlayStation to play, I boot up my Switch, whether it be with my wireless controller or just I do feel like doing handheld. Um, I pick up my Switch and I open up Pokemon and it's just nostalgic in a sense, considering it's like a franchise that I grew up with. But with these raids, it's something tells me like this is it's a live service game, but at the same time, I don't mind it.
No, it's the good kind of that. It's not live service because it's not based around a gameplay loop of feeding you seasons of content and shoving microtransactions down your throat to make
Gotcha.
money.
Okay.
Yeah, that's yeah, yeah. Live service games are more about like adding longevity to online multiplayer through seasons of content being spoon fed to you over time.
Okay.
This, at its core, is a single player game with online multiplayer options.
Yeah, I like it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't call the online multiplayer for this game live service. No, that's more like stuff like Fortnite and Suicide Squad and
Fair.
the upcoming
Okay.
foam stars. That's a live service game,
Okay.
but you've been doing the raids in the
Yeah.
Pokemon game.
Yeah. It's really like this franchise has come a long way, man. Like shit. The last time I played a Pokemon game, Terra types wasn't even a thing. Like
Okay.
you could like one of the things that like blows my mind is you could have like say a water type Pokemon and their Terra type is fire. Like what?
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Yeah, they've added some interesting things to them. I remember when I first played Pokemon Sword and I learned about the what is it like the oh boy, I'm gonna boomer butcher this, but like the mega evolutions. What are they called
Okay.
again? Um, is that what they're called? The mega evolutions?
I
Just
think
like
so.
where they evolve into like this big giant monster form of themselves because I remember one of the gym battles in Sword requires you to do that as like a tutorial. Basically
Really?
it teaches you about that feature.
I need to check
Yeah,
out Sword.
yeah. um I think they're called mega evolutions. I could be wrong. I was gonna say like giga evolution or something, but I think that's a Digimon thing.
Yeah, that's
um
Digimon. I know in Pokemon Violet and Scarlet, or just because I have we just have Violet.
Oh,
Um,
it is just called Mega Evolutions, by the way. I
Mega
just fact checked
Evolutions.
it.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, there's one of the prime examples is Mega Charizard X, which is a blue Charizard, blue and
Oh,
black.
okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I was say one of the Titan Pokemon that I have encountered, the five that I've beaten. That basically there's this plant called Herba Mystica, and it strengthens Pokemon in certain ways. And this is like it's yes, while this is part of the story, it's also considered a side quest. Like you have three different you have three different stories going on all at the same time, while you're trying to like go through and reach champion status by beating all of the gym leaders. You're also helping this guy named Arvin um, find and defeat all of the Titan Pokemon to help him with make basically he makes sandwiches out of the Herba Mystica, and when you feed the Herba Mystica to Miraidon, that is what the Herba Mystica sandwiches, not just the Herba Mystica. Miraidon is a bougie bitch. She wants it in a sandwich.
Okay.
um that's what fully that's where, because at some point Miraidon got injured at some point down the line, and lost all ability for like all of the abilities that you gain back when you beat all five of the Titans. Um but it's an interesting side quest. It really is. And
Okay.
it's not just like it's not just that it makes the Pokemon stronger. With the Titan Pokemon, what makes them Titan Pokemon is they grew bigger and stronger. So these are like giant versions of, not necessarily giant, but bigger versions of what a normal sized Pokemon out in the wild would be.
Right. I do remember some of those from Sword. They were like
Yeah.
bigger versions walking around. They had some Pokemon would come in different sizes too. I thought that was kind of realistic too, because
Yeah.
like not all cats and dogs are the same size.
Mhm.
So it definitely sounds like they've come a long way. Holy shit! Because like
It's good.
even since Sword and Shield, actually, because man, I remember a few generations back when everyone was giving them guff for Pokemon being based on things like keys, ice cream, and bags of garbage.
What?
So, yeah, there's an actual Pokemon called Rubbish. Look him up. He's literally a bag of trash. Um, yeah, I'm not kidding. This is actual. And there is, like, oh yeah, there's a Pokemon that looks like a chandelier, there's one that looks like a set of keys, and there's one that looks like an ice cream cone. And
Interesting.
they were all from, I want to say, maybe like the fourth generation, I
They
think.
did get pretty lazy
Um,
with the names. Porygon 2? The fuck?
that was like in the second generation, though. That was in the sequel generation, so they had sequel Pokemon. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like that was fine though. Crystal, for me personally, Gold, Silver, and Crystal is still the peak of that franchise. Gen 2 is like, I mean, because I'm a '90s kid, Gen 2 is my favorite gen.
I'll say
Um,
I'll take
I
the
know
OG generation. The first
the first
151.
hunt.
The first 151,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah, but they don't have Cyndaquil and the Unknown in it.
No.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
they don't have. Also, Gen 2 had the best Pokemon movies. I know a lot of people like the original, but
Yeah.
I think the third movie, the one with Entei and the Unknown, is actually my favorite.
Yeah, no, that one and Pokemon 2000 were my two favorites. But I like that Netflix did basically a reimagining of Pokemon the first movie, Mewtwo Strikes Back.
Okay. Yeah, they did. That's right.
Yeah, they sure
I
did.
remember.
Scene for scene, it was the same.
You can actually buy on Blu-ray a bundle pack that has the original movie and the new version together.
Really? Nice.
Yep. So, Pokemon Violet is a strong recommend from
Yeah,
you.
Pokemon Violet is a strong recommend for me, yes. Absolutely.
This seems like after taste testing a bunch of games on the Switch, you found one that you really locked into and
Mm-hmm.
sat with for a while.
Yep.
So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's how it is. That's how it is for me. I actually, yeah, since I replayed all the Arkham games, I don't know what I'm maining right now is Persona 3 Reload, since that just came out today. That's the remake of Persona 3 on Game Pass. So that's what I'm maining right now until the next big game comes out, which is probably going to be Banisher's Ghosts of New Eden next week.
Okay.
So, yeah, that one's looking really good to me. Um, well, speaking of which, my other thing is kind of news-ish.
News,
It's
okay.
early earlier this week we had a PlayStation State of Play, and
Yes.
I just kind of wanted to go over some of the highlights from that real quick because there are a few things I wanted to mention. I kept notes.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed the show. It seemed like at least a good 60 to 70% of what they showed is definitely up my alley.
Right.
So in order, Stellar Blade is one of the things that it was on my radar. I was interested in it, but now that I've seen what they showed at the beginning of this, it was like one of the
Mm-hmm.
first things they talked about. I think it was the first, like they opened with Helldivers 2, and then immediately after that they talked about Stellar Blade, and what
Yes.
they showed has me excited. It looks and feels like Nier Automata, although the characters look like they're straight out of like Street Fighter or Tekken.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the atmosphere looks like Nier Automata, which I love. It's in a post-apocalyptic setting. It's a open world action RPG. It's instead of robots though, you're fighting like mutated creatures. It just looks really good, and what I like about the presentation they gave for that one is that they seem very confident. Like this game knows what it is. It knows what it's setting out to be. It has a clear identity, and like it's like yeah, I'm all in on it. Like it's what I saw in that like gameplay preview that they showed at the very beginning of State of Play.
Mm-hmm.
Stellar Blade is like gone further up the list on my radar now for sure. Like that was a good showing.
Yeah.
And then Foam Stars, they showed some more of that, which we kind of already knew about, but we know now it's going to be a free PlayStation Plus game.
Yes. I'm excited for that.
Next week, actually, on the 6th.
Okay.
So the day it comes out, it'll be free for Plus members, and yeah, you and I will be recording a Let's Play of it
Sweet
for sure.
shit.
It's basically PlayStation's response to Splatoon. I know a lot of people are probably going to pass on it, and I can't blame them. Honestly, it is just another live service game, but I
Mm-hmm.
definitely want to try it.
I think it would be fun. It's worth a shot.
Sonic X Shadow Generations. Now, this is basically a remaster of Sonic Generations, which was a game I really like, one of the best modern Sonic games, if you ask me.
Okay.
Because Sonic Generations was a mixture of the old school 2D and the new age 3D Sonic. You play it's a like a the story is like a time bending story where old Sonic and new Sonic meet each other.
Mm-hmm.
The past and the past and the future come together. So there are some levels you play as classic Sonic, and some levels you play as modern Sonic.
See, this is a game that I could get into.
Really cool. Yeah. So Sonic Generations. That's why it's called Sonic Generations. Well, the other part of that is that this version of the game is including Shadow the Hedgehog and new levels featuring him.
Yes.
Which was not a thing in the original. He was a boss battle in the original, I think, but you didn't play as him.
Okay.
So
I think they might be doing that in honor of the Sonic the Hedgehog 3 that's coming out this holiday season this year.
Yeah, because Shadow is definitely in that.
Yeah, exactly.
If you saw the post credits of the second movie.
that's no secret now. That's no secret at this point.
Of course, back to back, the next two things they showed had me excited. The first thing was so Konami came up, and as much as I'm hesitant to give Konami any praise, especially after all the Kojima stuff, I am excited to mention though that the free game that they put out the same day that this aired, by the way, called Silent Hill: The Short Message. It's a 2-hour completely free exclusive to PS5 experience, and so far this year, which granted we're only in the beginning of February, but so far this year it's one of the best things I've played in 2024.
I was say you were
as far as new games
live streaming this earlier, and you said in the live stream that this could potentially be one of your top 10 for this November.
Yeah, as of right now, it's definitely a candidate, but keep in mind that this is still, we're on February 2nd, and there are a lot of things that have yet to come out this year,
Mm-hmm.
including Final Fantasy VII Rebirth
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the month, and it'll probably eventually be drowned out by other releases, both AAA and indie. Um, but as of right now, as of today, it's definitely
Contender.
a nominee contender at least.
Okay.
So, um, but yeah, it was a really good short game that's basically about this girl that is going through this apartment building looking for her friend, um, and is being chased by this cherry blossom monster throughout the events of the game, and the whole thing is like a metaphor for like bullying, child abuse, and suicide.
Mm.
And as Silent Hill usually is, the whole point of most Silent Hill games is that the character you're playing as is going through is being tormented by the entity that is Silent
Yeah.
Hill, using their trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Silent Hill always has been about torturing the protagonist with their own traumas.
Uh-huh.
Is what it's always been,
Yep.
and using the monsters as metaphors
Mm-hmm.
for that. Silent Hill 2, one of the most popular ones, is actually in a lot of ways secretly about sex abuse. That's why it introduced the creepy, sexy nurses as one of the monsters in it.
Yeah.
It's all about the main character dealing with his own psychological issues and trauma in that game.
Makes
That's
sense.
the first one Pyramid Head was introduced in as well.
Okay.
Is Silent Hill 2. Silent Hill 2 is by far the most popular game in the entire franchise, and that is why it is also the one being completely remade by Bloober Team, the people behind Layers of Fear, Observer, Blair Witch, and The Medium. One of my favorite horror developers. But I will say, so the trailer they showed for the Silent Hill 2 remake is a little confusing for me, because what I don't understand is why they chose to show combat when combat has objectively always been the weakest and least interesting part of any Silent Hill game. Like, Silent Hill games, the combat has always been intentionally clunky, and the weapons break eventually, like they do in Breath of the Wild or whatever, because it's supposed to feel, your character is supposed to be like an inexperienced person that's just trying to survive this nightmare. They're not it's not like in Resident Evil 2 where Leon is a cop and already knows what he's doing.
Right. Right.
You're just an everyday guy looking for his missing wife. And you're fighting off these monstrosities with a crowbar and shit. It's supposed to be clunky. But the trailer they showed for the Silent Hill 2 remake looks way too action heavy for what these games are supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
The short message game that I played is a perfect example of what Silent Hill should be. Even though it didn't have any combat, and it was in first person, they're usually in third person, in terms of atmosphere and narrative, and that is what Silent Hill is. It's psychological horror. It's not action horror. It's not survival horror. It's psychological. It's mess with your head shit. So the fact that they chose to show off combat for that trailer really is off-putting to me. I mean, I'm still looking forward to it, but I'm not gonna lie, it looks janky as hell. That combat did not look good, and the designs of the creepy nurses, they look more like mannequins now than they do deformed creatures, and I don't know why they chose that route. So I'm going to be going into this one with cautious optimism, because I like Bloober Team and Silent Hill 2 is great, but I'm a little worried that they may be missing the point of Silent Hill with this remake.
Right.
Like, the short message was really good because it got it. It got the point of Silent Hill. It's all about trauma and psychological horror. Silent Hill 2 remake looks like it's trying too hard to be Resident Evil, and that's not the point.
Right.
So I'm a little worried, but we'll see what happens. Next in line, we had Judas, which I'm super excited for because it's from the team that brought us the original Bioshock, including Ken Levine. And goddamn if Judas doesn't just basically look like Bioshock in space.
Right.
It seriously does.
Right.
And I'm so excited for it. It looks so fucking good. I can't wait. I can't really say much more on that, but like I trust these guys. Bioshock 1 was amazing, Infinite was amazing, 2 wasn't great when I first played it, but in hindsight it's good. So I have high hopes for this.
Yeah,
And Bioshock Infinite was my 2013 game of the year, so
it was a good
uh
game.
um Metro VR, I don't have the PSVR 2 yet, but I would be excited to play this because they only showed 2 VR games, and the other one they showed looked really janky. But
Yeah,
this one looked good. The one with the skeletons and the swords and shit, that one looked janky as hell.
yeah,
But
it
this
did.
one, Metro VR, this one looked good. This one looked good. Um it takes place in the Metro universe, so that's Metro 2033, Metro Last Light, and Metro Exodus,
Mm,
and those are good games, and I always felt like they were a good setting for a VR experience. So, um,
yeah,
also they're based on books too. Actually,
interesting. Okay.
the Metro yeah the Metro games. There's a book called Metro 2033 that they're based on. Um, so and then we got to see more Dragon's Dogma 2, and this one
Yes.
showed a lot more combat. And if I'm being honest, the combat in this one looks like it's a lot more fast-paced and action-heavy than the first game. So, um and from what I understand, because I know you said you struggled with one of the early boss battles in the first game or something, I apparently this game is going to start off with a recap of the events of the first game, so you don't have to play the first one to enjoy this one. You can just jump right in.
Okay.
Um, so they will give you a synopsis, and from what I saw, that combat, this one looks like it's gonna be really cool. Like that, they were like the dude was a battle mate. Like one of the characters was a wizard with a sword, like Gandalf, and he like teleported onto the dragon's head, and he started stabbing it in the neck and shit, and like they were doing all kinds of like midair acrobatics and
Hmm.
stuff. It looked like anime. It almost looked like anime combat in a medieval setting. Like it was really cool. I'm thinking this one is gonna be, since it's on modern systems, they have a lot more to play with, so they can do more than because I think the original's Dragon's Dogma was like a PS3 game that got remastered for PS4. So
Yeah,
that might explain
that's the
why.
vibe I got.
Yeah, that might explain why it might feel a bit dated from a gameplay perspective. But this one, just based on the trailer, I think is gonna be a lot more appealing to a modern audience. Um,
Yeah,
it
I
def
think I eventually want to get my hands on Dragon's Dogma 2.
and that's coming out next month. Um, and
Oh
then
shit!
then we saw Rise of the Ronin, which I believe now Rise of the Ronin. I don't know if this is exclusive. Stellar Blade, I think, is going to be a PS5 exclusive. The first one I mentioned, which
Hmm.
I'm excited to finally get a new IP that would probably be a system seller. But Rise of the Ronin,
Yeah.
I thought was exclusive, but I'm also thinking it might not be. Um, but that one, it looks good. I do want to play it, but it also looks a little bit rough around the edges. I think it needs a little bit of polishing before it's ready to fully go public. And I know that like it's scheduled to come out literally the same day as Dragon's Dogma 2, and I don't know if it's ready yet just based on that trailer, but it does look fun. Like
Okay.
it looks to me like a mix of Assassin's Creed, Batman Arkham, and Ghost of Tsushima. And those are three things I like. So
Hmm.
and I like any game basically that takes place in a feudal Japan setting too, because that's just like one of the most beautiful settings. So,
Right.
um, and I love samurai shit too on top of it. So,
That's fair.
so I am looking forward to it, but like I think this one's gonna be a rental until I know for sure, because some of what they showed, like I don't know, like when they were jumping across the rooftops and stuff, it looks fun, but like it looks like it needs a little polishing. Like when they were gliding, like right before they landed,
Hmm.
it didn't feel fluid the way that the wings kind of like it looks like they just like despawned in an empty frame, and then you just kind of land. There's no like fluidity to it. It's a little off-putting.
Hmm.
I just feel like there needs to be it needs to flow a little bit better than what I saw. But otherwise it looks good. I just think it could use just maybe a little bit of spit shine before it goes gold. Um And then Until Dawn remake coming to PS5 and
Dude,
PC.
I'm fucking excited for this.
I wonder if they're doing this because of the movie, you know?
It's possible. That's the first thing that I thought of. Like, Until Dawn has got to be one of my absolute favorite PlayStation exclusives.
Yeah, it definitely it was one of those games that had the privilege of being an early PS4 exclusive, so it had like that limelight too. Because I don't think anything Supermassive has done since then, including Dark Pictures and The Quarry, has been anywhere near as popular or successful as Until Dawn
No,
was.
no, definitely not. Like, Until Dawn was, oh my gosh, dude.
But it was also a unique idea at the time. I mean, it was playing
It
off of
was.
ideas of games like Heavy Rain and stuff, but it took that
Mhm.
concept, that Telltale concept, and made it its own thing. Um, in a way
I
that
really hope that
hadn't been done before, you know.
I really hope that Supermassive gets involved with the movie.
I just hope they bring back the same cast. Is what you
That
know.
too.
That's
That
kind of a
too.
big thing. Um,
Absolutely.
but yeah, I'll definitely be looking forward to this. I don't think the game is going. I think it's pretty much going to be shot for shot the exact same game. But I think, from what I understand, they're adding a because you know how the original in some scenes it basically had like fixed camera angles.
Yeah.
Like you were seeing your character from different camera angle perspectives, almost like you were watching them through the eyes of something in the woods watching them sometimes.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
apparently this version is going to have the option to go full third person mode in this game. Like no fixed camera angles, just the camera will be behind you the entire time.
Okay. I like that.
So, that's one of the things I think they're adding. I read a couple of stuff. I don't remember what the other stuff is, but more on that when we get closer to it. And then
Yeah.
of course the end of the show, one of the next big PS5 exclusives, they showed off Death Stranding 2, which, like,
Mhm.
look, for anyone who didn't play the first game, they were obviously going to be super confused by this trailer, but also people who played the first game are also super confused by it because that's just Kojima. He doesn't know what the fuck is going on in his own games. So that's kind of par of the course for his style of storytelling. He's like Sam Lake, the guy behind the Remedy games. He's just a mad genius when completely
Yeah.
unleashed and allowed to go off on his own. Just does like the wackiest, most experimental shit he can come up with, and I love him for it.
That makes sense.
I really love this though. I like that we're getting Norman Reedus again as the main character. I love that we're getting Fragile back. She was in the first game too, and they added those like extra pair of hands as gloves that are sitting on her shoulders, and is just kind of like apparently the idea behind
Mhm.
that was Kojima was like, sometimes it would be nice to just have an extra pair of hands, so I'm just gonna give a character extra hands because it's just why not.
That's
He
funny.
he does shit just because he can. Like that's his reason. They ask him like, "So why did you do
Right.
this?" And he's like, "Because I could." Because I wanted to. There's not really any deep meaning behind it or metaphors. It's just I wanted to do something weird and I did. So,
Mhm.
that's what I love about him. But I am looking forward to. I like that Troy Baker is back in this one. His character died in the original, but in this one he's
Yeah.
back as what I can only describe as an '80s glam rock Joker. Um, and he
Okay.
kind of looks like a member of the band Sting, in this game, with the white face paint and the black the black stuff under his eyes. And then I like that when he gets into combat, he actually uses a guitar and
Mhm.
shoots lightning out of it. That was cool. Um, but
Mhm.
one of the
Yeah.
coolest things I noticed was that like there's a little puppet character that hangs from you, like a little dummy, and he is in a
Yeah.
completely different animation style and frame rate from the rest of the game. And that's fucking cool.
Yeah.
Like that's a cool
Hell
thing to
yeah.
pull off, to mix that in like that. Um So I thought that was neat, but yeah, it looks like the gameplay is going to be much bigger too. They have new vehicles, new weapons. It looks like it's going to have more combat than the original did. Um and it looks like
Oh yeah.
this game is all about, okay, so we connected the world back together after the apocalypse in the first game, but now that we're connected, now what? Everyone's still dying of this disease. What do we do now? And that looks like it's where
Right.
it's picking up. So I'm excited for it. And apparently,
Mm-hmm.
Kojima, we already know from the Game Awards, he's working on an Xbox exclusive called OD. Apparently, he's also working on another PlayStation exclusive called Fizzant, which is going to be a a tactical espionage game similar to Metal Gear Solid. So I think that
Okay.
was kind of like one of the things too. PlayStation was like, all right, yeah, you can go off and do your own thing. You know, you got your Kojima Studios now, but please give us another Metal Gear Solid style game. We want one of those. So that's that's what he did. So he's got an Xbox exclusive coming, a PlayStation exclusive coming, and then of course Death Stranding 2. So
Okay.
OD, Fizzant, and Death Stranding 2 getting a triple dose of Kojima sometime in the future, and I'm here for it.
Hell yeah.
So, all right. Well, that was basically my recap of my highlights for State of Play. I know you watched it too. Did you have anything in particular besides Until Dawn you wanted to talk about from it?
No, you mean you pretty much covered it all.
All right.
Eh.
Okay. So what's your last media corner thing then?
So my last media corner entry is I talked about it in the topic for our 2023 year in review episode. But Sarah and I have since finished it. Uh, Percy Jackson and the Olympians.
Ooh, yeah, I hear good things about this
Holy
show.
shit, bro! Like, I'm telling you, like, when I dude, this show keeps you on the edge of your seat, and each episode has like a cliffhanger. Like with the way that they did this is they treated it like an actual TV show where they have where it's where they basically all of the episodes are streaming on Disney Plus now, but when they were releasing the episodes, it wasn't the morning of. It was every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Central Time is when 8 p.m. Central Time when they would drop the episodes on Disney Plus.
Yeah, I like how they sometimes wait until night now so that like uh people can watch it after work or whatever and not worry about having it spoiled before they get home. It seems
Yeah, I
like
like that too.
they're trying to do like they're trying to treat it like it was actually airing live on TV, because you know how like
Yeah.
The Walking Dead would air every Sunday at like 8 p.m., you know,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing.
And I was reading about or saw this earlier today. Um, Percy Jackson got an exciting season 2 update. Um, Percy Jackson, the Percy Jackson season 2 isn't greenlit, but the showrunners are working on it anyways.
Well, it's good to have a plan.
Hell
Um
yeah! Like, dude, like
so
the cliffhangers at the end of each episode was like yes, it made you like wanting to watch more, but in that same breath, that's what kept me coming back every week.
yeah, yeah, I love me a good cliffhanger, keeps me coming. Yeah, that's one of the things I'm big on when it comes to storytelling is
Like,
uh
dude, they did
keep
it
me
right
invested.
with this. They did it right with this one. So Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Demigod Percy Jackson leads a quest across America to prevent a war among the Olympian gods. Basically, Um, this is the whole plot about behind this is young Percy Jackson just finding out that he's a demigod. His mom was preparing him by telling him all of the like ancient Greek mythology stories about the Greek gods and shit. Just inadvertently, not on her end, it was inadvertently, but she was by telling him these stories, she was preparing him for who he is, a demigod, the child
Okay.
of a mortal human and a god.
I think I remember that from the movie, but I heard that this show is like way better than the movie was.
Dude, I can confirm that. Dude, this movie was or this show was really good. Like I'd be willing to give it a solid 10 out of 10 for for my rating. That's how strongly I
Okay.
feel about this show, bro. Like this was some good shit.
So I take it then that you've read the books and feel like
I have not.
it's pretty accurate. Oh, you haven't.
I
Okay.
haven't even touched the books. I just I really enjoy Greek mythology.
Fair enough. Fair
Greek
enough.
mythology,
Uh
Norse mythology. I enjoy it all.
yeah, I was yeah, I like those ones too. You know who else has really good mythology and like monsters and gods in it too is Egyptian. Egyptian mythology is
Yes.
pretty good too.
Yes.
You know,
I I can agree with that.
Osiris and stuff like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um but okay. Yeah. So I'm take it that we've got a good story, good acting. I think this
Absolutely.
is one where you can I think that considering it's based off of books and a movie that have been out for quite some time, I think most people know the story by now. So
Yeah.
it's one where I think you can be a little more loose, but I don't know if this show does anything new or different.
Right.
So
So
I am
the
looking
one
forward to seeing it though.
the one person I knew who was going to be in this and the character that he portrays is Ares, the god of war. The actor I am referring to is Adam Copeland, also known as the rated R superstar Edge. He is now part of the AEW roster, but he got his start, from my understanding, and he is a WWE Hall of Famer. But he was part of the WWE for the longest time, and within the last couple of years, like I think in 2020, January of 2020, he debuted. Not debuted. Returned. Excuse me. Um, he returned after a decade of being gone from what he thought was what was known to be a career-ending injury, and the fact that they got him to play the role of Ares, the god of war, he fits the role fucking perfectly, bro.
Nice. Yeah, I'm seeing. I notice a lot of wrestlers tend to get into acting, which kind of makes sense because there's a lot of acting involved in wrestling, especially
Yeah,
like
no,
with the whole
it's
like
just
character backstories and shit.
they
So
they're yes, it's sports entertainment is what they're calling it. Sports entertainment. They're telling a story. Each superstar has their own there's storylines in the WWE, and it is
yeah,
there because right now the story is that um let's see, The Rock just came back to the WWE a couple of weeks, he came back on my birthday on Monday. Was it Monday? It was a Monday Night Raw. It was, yeah, Monday Night Raw. The day one edition of Monday Night Raw, The Rock came back, and he was just on SmackDown tonight, doing something. I'm guessing it was something having to do with the match that has been teased for years now at this point, against his cousin Roman Reigns at for WrestleMania 40 that's coming up in April.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just pointing it out that, like, obviously The Rock kind of started that trend, but that, Dave Bautista's been in a lot of stuff. And who's starting to be in a lot of things lately is Samoa Joe, because, he was Sweet Tooth's body actor in Twisted Metal, even though Will Arnett did the voice, but he's also the voice of King Shark in the Suicide Squad game that came out today.
There's a reason for that, too, though. Either because there's times where when a superstar goes out to portray or goes out to pursue acting, usually that starts with some sort of an injury that put them out for a while in the first place. So they look.
Okay.
So they look for something to fill the void until they can come back. Some of them just stick.
Okay.
Some of them just end up sticking with the acting, and not coming back for years at a time.
Well, there's a lot of physical acting as Sweet Tooth, so I imagine that would have been hard to do with an injury. There's a lot of stunts involved in that performance.
Well, I mean, I would say no. Samoa Joe did sustain an injury. That's what. I think that no. That's a lie. No, the reason he went out and did this is because he just got released from his contract from the WWE. I heard him talk. I heard him talk about this on the PlayStation podcast.
That's right. I remember. He was
his
talking
buddy
about his role as Sweet Tooth.
Mm-hmm. Sure was.
Okay. Yeah. We kind of veered a little off topic there, but anyways, yeah, Percy Jackson.
Yes.
Percy Jackson, you really enjoyed 10 out of 10. I guess,
yes.
Most people have either read the books or seen the original movie by now, so or they've definitely heard everyone else talking about this show, so I guess there's not a whole lot you could say. But
so good.
I'm glad to hear it, because I'm definitely looking forward to giving it a go myself. I've heard good things from several people at this point, so...
It's so good.
All right. Well, speaking of things that are so good and deserving of a solid 10 out of 10, or in that ballpark, as I said before, we are going to talk about the greatest stories ever told in our topic today.
Yes.
Which is what we're going to transition to over now.
Once upon a time, in a faraway land, a young prince lived in a shining castle.
Okay, everyone, welcome to this episode's topic, the greatest stories ever told. We have talked about a lot of what we consider to be, really good pieces of media throughout history, a lot of our favorite stuff. But in this episode in particular, we're going to be focusing exclusively on the narratives of these things and what makes them so great. Because there's a lot of aspects to movies, shows, games, etc. that make them good outside of just the narrative. There's the the acting, the visuals, gameplay, stuff like that. But in this topic, we will be focusing on the narrative and the narrative only for these things. So, when you think of things that have the greatest stories, like just a story that really stuck with you, one that you keep thinking about, one that you keep going back to, maybe it had a really good twist or something, maybe it had a really good message, maybe it was a brilliant metaphor. What's one of the first things that comes to your mind when you think of really, really good stories?
I'd have to say the OG trilogy for Star Wars for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I would definitely say that. It was revolutionary for its time. I would say
Sure was way ahead of its
Empire
time.
Empire Strikes Back is probably the best of the three.
Yes,
It had
I'd have to agree with you on that.
it had the plot twist with Vader being Luke's father.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of great Han Solo stuff and Boba Fett stuff. Yeah, the original
Yep.
trilogy is definitely really good storytelling. Now, I think there can be some things said for some of the prequels and sequels, but I don't think any of them fall under greatest stories ever told by any means. That is definitely
No.
a crown held by the original trilogy, to be sure. But
Yeah.
I will say this: some of them do things that like in the sequel trilogy, for example, the Last Jedi, was that the second one?
Yeah.
I like that one because it's subversive. I like that it dared to be different and it dared to take the concepts of traditional storytelling and throw them out the window in favor of subverting your expectations. And
Mm-hmm.
that was good. I wouldn't put it anywhere near the greatest stories ever told, but I do think that that does make for good storytelling, in my opinion,
Absolutely, it does.
when you can do something like that. One of the first things that comes to my mind is the video game Soma, and the reason for that, sticking in kind of like a sci-fi is actually a great place for storytelling. But one of the reasons for it is because that game gave me an existential sense of dread that stuck with me long after I finished it, because the narrative of that game is basically that you play as a guy with a brain tumor who goes in for an experimental technology, and then you end up weirdly teleported to some kind of weird facility that may or may not be in the future or space or something, but eventually you find out it's underwater and you are actually 100 years in the future. Humanity has ceased to exist, and what happened to the original you is they died, and your brain scan was uploaded into a robot body. A copy of your consciousness was uploaded into a robot body, and that consciousness continues thinking that it's you throughout the rest of the game. And
Mm-hmm.
throughout the game, there are different points where you have to transfer your consciousness from one body to another in order to keep moving forward, but you realize that it's not a transfer, it's a copy. So at one point in the game, about halfway through, you have to change diving suits to go deeper into the water, and you copy your consciousness from one robot body into another, but then the old version of you is still conscious and talking in the other chair, and you have to decide whether or not to leave him like that or put him out of his misery. Whether or not to kill the version of you that you just were in the game.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And the game ends with you copying your consciousness to this machine called the Ark and sending it into space because it's the last remnants of humanity, which is basically just digital copies of their consciousness on a satellite floating in space. But basically that creates another version of you, one version of you that gets to live a happy life in this digital world on the space station, and the other version who went through all this that is now stuck in this underwater hellhole forever. So
Right.
it is so fucked up, but I love it for that reason. It's one of the best stories I've ever experienced. It's very Lovecraftian in terms of it being cosmic horror and existential dread, but it brings a lot of important questions to the table about what it really means to be human. Is it the flesh and bones saggy bag of meat that we walk around in, or is it our consciousness, our spirit, our mind, the perception of us, how we see ourselves that makes us what we are? And that is
Okay.
that is why I like that game so much, because the real question, it's kind of like got the whole Detroit Become Human thing. Can a machine
Right, yeah.
have feelings? Is it? But it's a more horrifying, fucked up version of it. The best example of it is you walk up to this robot who thinks that he is one of the people who used to work down here. He thinks he's a guy named Carl. And all you see when you see him is a robot that's broken in half laying on the ground. What he sees when he looks at himself is a human body that's been injured.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why I like it. That's why I like it, because since since they uploaded the consciousness of the real dead Carl into this robot, the robot thinks it is actually him.
Okay.
And that is what makes it so fucked up. With your character and the disembodied voice of another one named Catherine, whose consciousness was uploaded into basically a walkie-talkie that you carry with you, you guys are the only ones that realize that the real yous are dead and that you're just copies. You're the only ones that get it. But everyone else is like either gone completely insane or turned into a deformed monster down there that you have to avoid. And I think it's not about the gameplay at all or any of that. It's the story. The story of that game is absolutely top tier. It's by far my all-time favorite horror game for that reason alone.
Okay.
It is the best Lovecraft story ever told that wasn't written by Lovecraft.
Right.
Truly. In the same vein of underwater horror nightmares, I have to say that the original BioShock also falls under this greatest stories ever told for different reasons. This game has one of the absolute best plot twists that kind of gets you thinking I've ever seen. And also, the whole point of BioShock, part of the reason it was even created was because there's a book called Atlas Shrugged written by Ayn Rand. And it's a very politically driven, libertarian leaning book that has a lot of things to say that are basically, not true. And BioShock was created as a direct response to that book in an attempt to debunk it. And
okay.
I think they set out what they meant to do. BioShock is a very politically driven game franchise, and the main villains of each game represent different aspects of different political ideologies. The main villain of the first game is libertarianism, the second game is socialism, and the third game is religious conservatism.
Okay.
BioShock Infinite being the third one.
Right.
And in the first game, though, basically the main villain, his name is Andrew Ryan. Do you notice the similarities there? Ayn Rand, Andrew Ryan, you get it? So, so anyways, though, but basically the story of BioShock is this guy named Andrew Ryan decided that he didn't want to pay taxes, he didn't care about the poor, and he didn't like religion and all that. Basically, he hated rules, and he hated restrictions, and he hated, basically, not being able to just do whatever he wants consequence free. So he created his own city under the water called Rapture, and basically made it a community of unregulated, self-thriving individualism. But as things usually happen with things that go unregulated and without rules for too long, everything eventually went to shit.
Right.
People started getting high on this juice called Splice that gave them basically elemental superpowers. They started splicing up too much and became these deformed monstrosities known as splicers running around. Everything went to hell. The genetically altered young girls that they were extracting energy from have now turned on them and are being protected by these giant diving suit monstrosities known as Big Daddies. And it's very complicated how a lot of this came to be and where a lot of these creatures and stuff came from. But long story short, the whole point is that when you try to create a community an independent community outside of wherever you are that is like no, wait, that's not the right thing. The whole point is that, like, the reason that we have some of the rules that we do is so that society doesn't end up like this. You know?
Right.
That was kind of, the message they were trying to contribute here. But the big thing is that your character, a silent protagonist named Jack, is on an airplane, crashes in the middle of the water. There's a lighthouse there. You go in the lighthouse, you go down, you're in rapture. And you're being guided by a guy named Atlas the whole time. And basically you find Andrew Ryan eventually and you kill him with a golf club. It's a very famous scene. But the twist here is that even though Andrew Ryan was the bad guy, Atlas, the guy who's been guiding you the whole time, is the true bad guy and the true final villain. And it turns out that you are actually a Russian sleeper agent, and your trigger phrase is "would you kindly," which is something that's been said to you throughout the entire game. Every time Atlas asks you to do something, he says, "Would you kindly go pick up that crowbar? Would you kindly make your way to the atrium? Would you kindly go restore the generator?" And once you realize that, and you find out this entire time that you've been playing this game, everything you've been doing because you were told to do it, because you are programmed that way. And besides being a game that is meant to debunk Atlas Shrugged and Ayn Rand, it's also a game that's meant to be commentary on the illusion of choice in video games. On the fact that in a video game, you really are basically, video games have player agency. You have the freedom to do what you want. You're not just along for the ride. You're in the driver's seat, but you are still at the mercy of the developers for the most part and guided along the path that they want you to go down. And that's what that game is about in a lot of ways too. It's kind of meta commentary on that, which is why I think it's so absolutely brilliant, so genius, So, but yeah, those are a couple for me. Let's get some more examples from you of some of the best stories ever.
Oh, let's see.
And why?
Harry Potter.
Okay.
This is a big one. So, for me, I read the first couple of books when I was younger. I didn't really get the chance to read the rest of them, but I've seen all the movies. But here's the thing. What makes this one of the greatest stories ever told is this franchise has been around for how long? Let's see, 20, 25 years? It's been around for a long time. Today's generation of kids are getting into this. The older generations are getting into it. It's everything surrounding the wizarding world of Harry Potter has just blown up.
It's got solidified longevity. It's survived generations. It hasn't fizzled out.
It really hasn't. It still holds up to this day.
Oh yeah, I can respect that. From a storytelling aspect on it specifically, though, I would say what I would say about it is probably it follows the hero's journey formula very well.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's probably the biggest thing that it has going for it, for sure. I mean, it is, you're like, what was it, like the early 2000s that these came out, these books?
Yeah. Oh, when did the first book come out? I'm gonna look up
or was it in the 90s?
That's what I'm thinking, because I know the first movie came out in 2001.
Right. Okay. So it was the 90s then. When did
the first Harry Potter book come out? Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, released June 26th, 1997.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay. So yeah, that's Harry Potter's been around for quite some time.
Yeah, so it's definitely got that longevity to it. I do think From what I remember, from the movies at least, there is some good character development there, which is a
Yes.
major part of storytelling. You know, some twists and turns, which is a good part of storytelling too. Um, but so the hero's journey, and I want to save getting too deep into this because there's something I want to talk about that like is very on the nose with it on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But the hero's journey is basically in three stages: departure, initiation, and return. And that
Mm-hmm.
is the setup for departure is, when the hero leaves their home to set out on a quest. Initiation is this part of the story where they are faced with trials, where they have to overcome something be uh in order to be successful. And then return is the return journey home. um
Okay.
and that is the hero's journey, basically in a nutshell. And I do think that the Harry Potter games or movies, books, all that shit follow that to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
In more detail, if you look up the hero's journey, they have a great visual of it on Wikipedia. But basically, it is the transference between the known into the unknown. So, like in Harry Potter's case, he starts off in the known, living as a
Mm-hmm.
normal muggle with his family in the cupboard and all that. But then he gets pulled into the wizarding world, which to him is the unknown.
Yes.
Um, so it starts with the call to adventure, which in his case is him being invited to Hogwarts, and then the supernatural aid, which in his
Mm-hmm.
case is Hagrid basically saving him from his abusive aunt and uncle.
Yes.
Um, and then you have your threshold guardians, which is basically the spot where the transference from known into unknown.
Mm-hmm.
The threshold guardian in this case would be his aunt and uncle trying to prevent him from going from the known to unknown. So he has to overcome that, and now his journey can truly begin.
Yep.
And then you have the mentors, the helpers, and the challenges and the temptations, and
Yep.
then there's a revelation section that's called the
Mm-hmm.
Abyss, which is where the character experiences a death and rebirth of them as a character. It's where they cease to be the old version of themselves and become the new enlightened version of themselves. Where would you
Yes.
say that was for Harry Potter in the franchise? Where did he really grow as a character? Would it be the death of Cedric? Probably.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah. The death of Cedric Diggory in
what was the
the
revelation
goblet.
for him, I think?
I think
Like, what was Harry Potter's
shit.
big moment where he had to cease being a regular school child and start really taking seriously this, oh, I need to fight a war
I
moment,
mean, okay, so that was when he first that if you want to get technical, that happened in the Sorcerer's Stone when they realized Professor Quirrell was hiding something underneath his headgear. This just so happened to be he who shall not be named.
True. But it didn't get fully serious yet then. They were still kids, and they were still, because in the next movie they were still doing kid things while being involved in other stuff. But these characters, like the Basilisk and
The
Professor
bastard,
Quirrell,
yeah.
they feel like mini bosses in comparison to some of the shit they've actually had to deal with later. And I do think that you were right the first time. I think Goblet of Fire is the turning point for Harry Potter. I
Yeah,
think
Goblet of
that's
Fire
the
is, yeah, because that's when Voldemort takes his true form. Is I think
exactly. I think that's what it is.
the first time we see Voldemort's true form is in the Goblet of Fire.
Because after revelation there is transformation, like I said, and then
Mm-hmm.
there's atonement. And this doesn't always apply, but sometimes the hero does have something they need to atone for. Did
Yeah,
Harry Potter have to atone for anything in this series? Do I remember? Did he make an oopsie that he had to fix?
not that I can think of.
I feel like he did, but maybe
I
not.
can't
But then
remember.
at the end we have return, which is when they go back from the unknown back into the known, and in his case that would be after defeating Voldemort and, returning back to the Muggle world and, having a normal life and having his own kids and shit.
That
So
happened after the events of the Deathly Hallows.
yes, and that's what I would say is Harry Potter is why it is a good story, even though obviously I'm reluctant to give J.K. Rowling any credit because of who she's become recently, but
Right.
at one point in the past she was a good writer and she understood the hero's journey formula.
Now, I don't know how much
yeah.
truth there is to this, but I wouldn't be able to speak on it as far as like narrative wise because I have not read the screenplay yet. Because when I say screenplay, I'm referring to Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. I have the book.
Oh, right.
I have the book, but from my understanding, they are in serious talks about doing a movie for the Cursed Child.
Interesting. Okay.
I'm here for it. I would love to see it.
Well, what is another good example of a story that follows the hero's journey diorama to a perfect T?
Is it Lord of the Rings?
Lord of the Rings, yep. Especially if you consider Frodo the main protagonist.
Absolutely.
That is absolutely the hero's journey. The known to him is the Shire, his normal life, and he gets thrust into the unknown almost unwittingly by being gifted the One Ring, and his whole world comes apart around him.
Sure
and
does.
He definitely faces trials. He makes friends. He loses friends, and Frodo actually does have an atonement moment because there are moments where the ring starts to get the better of him, and he almost didn't destroy it. He almost didn't. So and he had to atone for that, and then of course he goes through the return journey home and all that, then writes a book about all of his adventures, and then goes to live with the elves happily ever after. Lord of the Rings is probably the prime and most perfect example of the hero's journey, story writing formula. Exactly everything about it is that perfectly. And it's some great stuff. There are some beautiful moments in there, the moments with him and Sam where it's, and God, Sam deserves a Purple Heart or some shit because that man, at times literally carried him through the third act of that franchise. You know?
No, absolutely.
And yeah, it's just so well done, and it's not even, and Frodo is definitely going through the whole hero's journey arc, but it's not just him.
No,
Aragorn too. Aragorn also goes through a version of that story arc as well. Except I think his ends a little bit different because he's not. It's kind of, you could call it a return home since it's technically Return of the King and it is his heritage, its birthright. But it's not where he started. It's not what he wanted originally, but it's what he accepted in the end. So it's a bit of a different journey for him, but still a very similar. It's kind of a similar arc. But Frodo's side of the story is 100% literally everything about the hero's journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
And then we met some strange characters along the way, like Gollum and Smeagol, one and the same, but
yes, parts of the trials and tribulations for sure.
Yep.
And Frodo had, I would say, the Two Towers might have been Frodo's transformation moment. Where he, had to start taking things a little more seriously. Actually, no. You know what? I wouldn't say that. I would say it was before that. I would say it's when Boromir dies at the end of the Fellowship.
Yep.
That was Frodo's transition, I think.
Yeah, sure was.
That was his. Yeah, that was his moment where he realized, oh shit, not only is this real, but now we're on our own and we got to take it more seriously.
Exactly.
So, where the Fellowship fell apart was the big transformation for him.
Yeah.
So, Honestly, if you want to break it down, you could really say that all 3 books / movies in that franchise each have their own self-contained hero's journey arc within them too.
Yeah, true.
Um, in a lot of ways, but missing certain pieces. Obviously, you don't have the return home until the end of the 3rd arc, but you know, they've got some of it there. But the other thing I wanted to mention that definitely falls under the hero's journey, like, and it's super on the nose about it, is the Alan Wake franchise.
Okay.
Particularly, I consider it creative because it's literally a story about a story. Like, it's a meta-narrative, and the idea of a horror writer getting trapped in a story that he doesn't remember writing is really cool, and that was a good original concept for the first game. But then they've taken it into narrative, like, extreme narrative heights in the second game, and what's funny is that, you know, stop me if this sounds familiar, but the names of the 3 books that Alan has written within the entire franchise are Departure, Initiation, and Return.
Okay.
So the book that Alan
yeah.
wrote, the story that Alan wrote in the first game that he gets trapped in and doesn't remember writing is called Departure. Then when he gets trapped in the dark place at the end of that game, in the second game, he's trying to write a book called Return to write himself out. Every time he tries to write it, though, he fails, and the reason is because he's trying to skip from Departure to Return without doing the initiation in between. He's trying to skip a crucial part of the hero's journey, and it's not working. So the second game is all about him realizing that he needs to write that second act in order for the story to work, in order for him to escape the dark place.
That makes sense.
It's kind of about him figuring out his own hero's journey while also simultaneously writing it at the same time.
Yeah.
You know? So that's one of the reasons I like about that, but I'm not going to dig into that one too deep because I've exhausted the amount of things I can say about that game on this show. But
Right.
But that's that's something that, like, I just thought about more recently was, oh shit, this game is actually a metaphor for the hero's journey. That's one of the parts I didn't realize at first. The other story formula I want to talk about is called Dan Harmon's Story Circle. Dan Harmon being the guy behind Community and one of the writers for Rick and Morty and all that.
Okay.
So it's very similar to the hero's journey, but it's a lot more linear, and it's basically a pie chart that says that when I read this to you, it's going to sound pretty much the same as the hero's journey, but it's his own, like, more condensed version of it. So, in order, a character is in a zone of comfort or familiarity. Then they desire something. So they enter an unfamiliar situation. Then they adapt to their new situation. Then they get that which they wanted. Then they pay a heavy price for getting what they wanted. Then they return to their familiar situation, and they have changed as a result of the journey. So that's Dan Harmon's Story Circle. So basically, a character's in a familiar situation. They decide they want something, so they enter an unfamiliar situation to get it. They adapt to that situation. They get what they want, but they pay a heavy price for it. Then they return to their familiar situation, and they have changed as a result of the journey. Does that sound familiar to you in any kind of way? Like,
yeah.
Like, what's the first story that comes to mind that follows that formula to you? Like, what's a journey where someone wanted something, they went after it, they paid a heavy price to get it, but they changed for the better in the end?
There's a lot.
Oh yeah, it's a very popular form of story writing. By the way, this Dan Harmon's Story Circle is the method that he uses for writing every single episode of Rick and Morty. Every episode of Rick and Morty follows the Dan Harmon Story Circle. So, like, think of, like, any story where a character is like, oh, I'm gonna go hunt after this treasure because I really want this treasure, and they get the treasure, but then someone dies, a friend dies, like, while they're escaping or something, but, like, you know, they learn something at the end, they become a better person, you know, something like that. I would say a good example of Dan Harmon's Story Circle is probably the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Yes. I agree with that.
Because those almost always have some kind of greed involved. You know, they're going because they're going after treasure, but there's always some kind of caveat. It's like cursed or somebody dies or something, you know? And I wouldn't exactly say anyone learns anything in the end of those movies, but they do change. The characters do change over time. Will Turner, for example, in the first game, or in the first movie, goes from being a blacksmith to being a pirate by the end of it. You know, Elizabeth Swann goes from being a governess's daughter to being a pirate. You know, they definitely change by the end of the first movie. Now that I'm thinking about it, though, I have to say, I would say if there's one character I had to pick, definitely follows Dan Harmon's story circle in the Pirates franchise overall, it's Elizabeth, for sure.
Yeah.
Because
I can agree with that.
She's a governess's daughter who's in a zone of comfort and familiarity. The pirates, she desires a life of adventure on the seas. She desires piracy, you know. She enters an unfamiliar situation when the pirates come to town and basically kidnap her because she has that coin. And then she adapts to the situation because she's well versed in the laws of pirates, and she, you know, asks Barbossa for a parlay, and she learns how to be a pirate herself. She gets what she wanted. She becomes a pirate, but she pays a heavy price for it when her father is killed.
Right.
And which happens in a later movie, but it happens. She doesn't learn about it until the third movie when they're going to Davy Jones' locker. But yeah. But like, but she does. The only thing is, I don't think she like fully returns to her familiar situation. She does by the end of the first movie, but then in the second movie, they come to execute her and Will in the beginning because of them helping wanted pirate Jack Sparrow in the first one. So obviously, you know, shenanigans ensue, and they have to, you know, she has no choice but to be a pirate.
Right.
So, but that's where they have changed as a result of the journey comes in. She's definitely changed. She went from being a pampered governess's daughter to a swashbuckling pirate. So, I don't know if, I guess you could say the first Pirates of the Caribbean is probably one of the really, like, a really good story. Like, it was definitely unique for its time. Like, the franchise did kind of start going downhill as it went, but I think the first movie is definitely a huge standout for being unique and probably, like, a really well-told pirate story for its time, for sure.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Just a definite standout. I know that obviously it feels like there's a running theme here with me with some of this, because a lot of what I've been talking about is horror. But if we're being completely honest, horror tells some of the best stories sometimes. You know, a lot of it is metaphors for trauma and mental health and shit. So, and also like just like the plot twists and the stuff. Like, I would consider the first Saw movie to be like a really good story just because of the twist at the end. You know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put any of the others up there, but the first one definitely, you know, stands out among its peers as having like probably one of the best, most unpredictable plot twists in movie history. It's just very smart, being a very smart movie done on a very low budget. And a very, very smart storytelling in that one. But I don't want to spoil it, but last year we had Talk to Me, which I think is really good because the movie is a unique creative concept where it uses getting addicted to channeling ghosts as a metaphor for drug addiction. And that definitely stands out. But The Last of Us, I feel like you can't talk about the greatest stories ever told without talking about The Last of Us. Because this is truly one of the greatest stories ever told. It is a story about a man who lost his daughter at the beginning of an apocalypse and has become a mercenary and has done unspeakable things to make a living in this new world, and then is tasked with transporting another girl who reminds him of his daughter from one place to another. And for him, it's just a job at first, but as time goes on, he starts getting attached to her and seeing her as like a new daughter. And the journey is about how they grow close together as like a surrogate family, and you know, about the choice that he has to make at the end when he delivers her to where she's supposed to go, and the things that he has to do, and the secrets that he has to keep from her as a result in the end, because of the new father figure role that he has taken on, you know. And then, of course, where that goes in the sequel in terms of him having to suffer the consequences of his actions, and what that story has to say about the cycle of revenge.
Right.
You know, the whole eye for an eye makes the whole world blind thing. And I think that the second game has a lot to say about how everyone is the hero of their own story, but potentially the villain of someone else's. You know? And I think that's pretty cool and deep, because it's one of those things where the villain is the villain to you because they've done something horrible to someone you care about, but when you see things from their perspective, it turns out that you were the villain to them.
Oh shit.
You know?
Okay.
And I think that's pretty cool. I think that's a pretty cool storytelling device. You don't get to see that a whole lot. There's not a whole lot of stories that paint sympathy for the villain, but also a lot of stories are they paint villains as like cookie cutter caricatures, like cartoon villains that are like decidedly evil and have no room for redemption. Whereas The Last of Us Part 2 goes for more of a everyone kind of sucks equally and they're all just trying to survive thing, you know? But okay, I mean, we've covered some great grounds of objectivity here, too, for sure, and there are a lot of great stories, but, like, for you personally, what are some of your favorite stories ever told and why, you know? Like, what makes them your
personally,
favorite?
A lot of my favorite stories...
Supernatural?
Actually, yeah. I didn't. That one didn't even like cross my mind, but yeah, I'd have to say, yeah. There's multiple times where both.
I mean, talk about a series that is the hero's
right.
journey,
Yeah.
you
No.
know?
They definitely have. There's Sam and Dean both have to atone for something multiple times throughout the
and several people died.
Yeah,
they paid price a lot.
they sure do. Yeah, no, there's a lot of death in that show. Man, yeah, no, you hit it right on the head with this one. Yeah, no, I'd have to. Yeah,
I would say Supernatural has had some like ups and downs for sure. There's definitely some weak points throughout the whole show, like some weaker seasons. But overall, I would say the whole narrative in general is really well done and has a very satisfying ending.
Yeah, absolutely. They could not have ended it any more perfect.
Ass loads of character development throughout that show.
Hell yeah.
And it's not like you genuinely see, you know, like Sam and Dean are Sam and Dean throughout the show, but they change and grow as people so much, even between episodes, not just seasons, but like some of the things they see and experience really kind of like change who they are as people.
Absolutely. And then you got characters like Jack that come in that really shake things up. Like,
who, granted, comes in closer to the end of the show, so you don't get a lot of him, but in the short amount of time you do see him, he goes through a lot of character development.
He sure does. He absolutely does.
So yeah, I definitely have to agree with that. I mentioned it earlier when we were talking about Ted, but Seth MacFarlane's The Orville, I have to put up here as a really great storytelling. For me personally, for speaking subjective, I think, like I said, there is a lot of social commentary in that show, and it's very well done. I think one of the best examples is there's a race of aliens known as the Mocklins in that show, and I think it's maybe in season 2 that they do this episode, but all of the Mocklins they're exclusively male species, basically, because if any of them are born female, they're forced to go through a sex change to be male. So it is exclusively a male species. So, they have, so one of the characters, Boris, and his boyfriend, they end up having a daughter, and Mocklin Law says that they have to go to their home planet to, get her changed, but they actually fight for their right to keep her female. And
Okay. There you go.
And they go through a whole court thing about it, and they put up a lot of solid arguments, and it's basically a metaphor for like gender identity stuff and people's right to choose and stuff like that. And
Okay.
and
I like
it's a
that.
very forward thinking social commentary. But here's the other thing too I like about this show. Mild spoiler here, but they lose the court case and they're forced to give their daughter the change, so that she becomes their son. And it is disappointing, but it's one of the reasons I like the show so much, because it's not afraid to give an episode an unhappy ending.
Right.
Like, there are a lot of episodes with happy endings, but this is a show that's not afraid to let the main characters lose sometimes.
Right.
And I think that's realistic. You can't win every fight, unfortunately. You just can't. And it's one of those shows where sometimes they have to come to the realization that, fuck, we can't force our Earth views on all these other planets, unfortunately. They have their own rules and shit,
They sure do.
So... And it's, some of them are really fucked up planets, but
Yeah.
but that's the thing, is that, like, and it's difficult for Captain Ed Mercer, who's Seth MacFarlane's character, because their job is just to observe and report, but because of the kind of person he is, he wants to be an activist in every planet they visit and change them for the better.
Right.
And yeah, sometimes the characters learn some very harsh lessons this way. And that's one of the reasons I think it's such a great show, because it touches on that stuff in a very respectful way, but also in a very realistic way.
Right.
Is one of the reasons. And and now you understand why, a show like that, seeing Seth MacFarlane be capable of that, why I think something like Ted is such a huge step down.
Right. Yeah.
In comparison, dude, just do yourself a favor, go on Hulu, watch all 3 seasons of The Orville, and then you'll understand why what I'm talking about. Like, as a Seth MacFarlane fan, you should definitely do yourself the huge favor of putting that higher on your list. For
Fair.
sure.
Yeah, no, I need to
a quick fire, by the way, a couple things that I think the general public would consider some of the greatest stories ever told, and I, don't dislike any of these things, but they're not all for me, but they do deserve the respect that they have in solidified history. But I would say, well, there is actually, there's a movie from 1965 actually called The Greatest Story Ever Told.
Based on the Bible.
But that's not what I'm talking about. Yeah. But, yeah, and that's not what I'm talking about, because I'm not a religious person, so the Bible is not a fun story for me.
No, definitely not.
But, well, I don't think it's meant to be fun anyways.
No.
But but I would say people would probably consider things like The Godfather, Titanic,
The Sound of Music.
The Sound of Music, yeah, which I agree with. I've seen that, and that is a really good movie about standing up against Nazis. On that same note, Schindler's List, the one with Liam Neeson, about the guy going around killing the guy going around assassinating Nazis during the World War II time.
One would also argue Good Will Hunting.
Oh God, yes. Actually, that's not even an argument. That's just objectively one of the best stories ever told. Period.
Yeah, no, it's a good movie.
There's no argument to be had there. That is a genuinely strong, like. Yeah, that movie does a lot for stuff with, like, therapy and, God, the performances from Robin Williams and, Matt Damon.
And Ben Affleck.
Yeah. Yeah, and Ben Affleck. Honestly, though, Robin Williams himself has been in a lot of movies that have really amazing stories, and I don't know if that's just a coincidence or if it's just that his performances lend to them being such good stories, because the writing has a lot to do with it too. He didn't write the shit, he just acts in
Right.
it. But you know, coincidentally enough, most of the movies he was in, like that and Dead Poets Society
Patch
and
Adams.
1 Hour Photo, are and Patch Adams, yeah, are just really good
And
stories
Patch
in
Adams,
general.
fun fact, is based on true events.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of famous lines too, like Dead Poets Society is where "Oh Captain, My Captain" came
Mm-hmm.
from. Um, the Shawshank Redemption, I think that deserves a spot on this list for sure. The Stephen King story about the guy who escapes
Mm-hmm.
prison, for sure. I know you're familiar with that one, I'm assuming.
Yeah, vaguely.
Um, and on that same note, I would say probably The Shining
Yep.
belongs
Mm-hmm.
up there a little
Yep.
bit. Um, The Prestige. I have to agree with this. The Prestige. This was a movie with Christian Bale and Hugh
Mm-hmm.
Jackman about a couple of and it was a Christopher Nolan movie too, by the way. I think. But this was a movie about after a tragic accident, two stage magicians in 1890s London engage in a battle to create the ultimate illusion while sacrificing everything they have to outwit each other.
Okay.
So it's basically a movie about two magicians trying to one up and outsmart each other, and it has some of the smartest plot twists I have ever seen in a movie. It is so fucking good. Anyone who's never seen The Prestige, stop listening now, go watch The Prestige, then come back and then finish listening, because that is, oh my god. 100% that is truly. It's also got Scarlett Johansson, Michael Caine, Rebecca Hall. David Bowie's even in this. Andy Serkis is in it. It was really fucking good. One of the best Christian Bale, Hugh Jackman movies out there for sure.
Okay.
And it has some amazing plot twists. I think some people would say maybe Dances with Wolves, the old Kevin Costner film. Braveheart, the old Mel Gibson film, probably fall under these.
Call of the Wild.
Yes, Call of the Wild. Balto. I mean, if we're talking books too, then yeah, like Call of the Wild, Balto, Where the Red Fern Grows, Animal Farm, of Mice and Men.
Scarlet Letter.
Yeah, Scarlet Letter. I think that one's a little more divisive. I don't think as many people like that as history thinks they did.
That's fair.
Anything written by Jane Austen, though, definitely goes on there. Anything written by Mark Twain, like Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn.
Yes.
Yeah. Those things all belong up there too. I mean, obviously, you can't really talk about the greatest stories ever told without talking about some books, because that's where most of these stories come from in the first place.
Exactly.
I would say, in speaking of things based on books and fairy tales and storytelling, I like that modern Disney movies are starting to push towards the villain being more like things like family trauma and stuff, instead of these like cliche comic book villains,
A really good example of that is Encanto.
Exactly, Encanto. I love that one for that reason. Very, very solid movie too. Luca
Yes.
was pretty good too, because that one didn't really have a traditional villain. It was more about like the character dealing with their own insecurities instead. So that's a pretty solid. Those are pretty solid ones too. If we're talking like greatest stories ever told, though, I think only one Disney movie really, really falls under that, and that's The Lion King. And
I was gonna say, We can't talk about this without talking about The Lion King.
Yeah, I think The Lion King is probably the epitome of Disney storytelling. I think that was probably
Yeah.
objectively the best one that they have ever done in terms of storytelling, like the top, like the best story they've ever written. Um
I have to agree with that.
and I mean, fun fact though, it is loosely based on Hamlet, which if we're
That
being
I didn't know.
if we're being honest, Shakespeare was a really good storyteller. I mean, he was responsible for Hamlet, Macbeth, I think maybe Romeo and Juliet too. Um,
Yeah.
so, I mean, those are some great stories, which, I mean, when you think about it, a lot of the stories that we have these days, a lot of the storytelling that we have, all of it
Uh-huh.
is in one way or another loosely based off of stories that have already been told, or at least the formulas they brought to the table.
Right.
In a way, you could argue that almost every rom-com, pretty much every rom-com, is a form of Romeo and Juliet. You know,
Yeah.
in a way, um, you could argue that pretty much every story of a family betrayal and like someone overthrowing an evil king is Hamlet. you know,
Mm-hmm.
just stuff like that. They all come from somewhere. There's some kind
Yeah.
of like blueprint, some kind of foundation in there, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess if I could ask you for like one example from movie, TV show, video game, and book, what would you say is the best story you've ever experienced in each of these mediums?
I'd have to say Harry Potter as far as books go.
Okay.
Movies, that's a tough one. That's a that's a tough one. So I'm gonna have to, if I had to choose.
Let's try to make it a little interesting too and try to go with movies that aren't based on books unless they tell a better story than the book did.
Okay. If I had to choose, Patch Adams
Okay.
would be
That's
would be my movie in that category. Would be my favorite story in the movie category.
that's
TV
fair.
show, hands down. Well, so there's reasoning behind that, because Patch Adams is actually what inspired my dad to do what he does today.
Right. Yeah.
Patch Adams inspired my dad to get into the medical field. TV show, hands down, Supernatural. Video game, I would have to say, even though there's like, you can change the narrative based on your choices. Until Dawn.
Okay. That's an interesting choice. I would have to say, well, before I get to like my favorites in each one, I do want to throw out a couple more examples that just kind of went through my mind. I would have to say Firewatch is probably a really good example of a game with a great story because it's a short little 4 hour, basically walking simulator game. But in that game, you play as a guy who, has gone through some hardships recently. His wife passed away, he lost his dog and stuff. He's just trying to get away from it all, and he becomes a ranger at a fire watch tower in a forest. But
Mm-hmm.
the mystery of a missing hiker and a dead body that he comes across, and he notices someone watching him from the distance. It starts to
Yeah.
become this like intriguing story of this man with nothing going on trying to fill the void in his life by inventing a mystery that doesn't exist. And by misinterpreting coincidences and stuff and turning what is normal circumstances into a horror story in his own mind to make his life exciting. And the whole time you've got a partner that's in another Firewatch tower you're talking to over a walkie-talkie and kind of getting close to her, and it's a really good story. It's a really
Mhm.
good story about like perception and human connection and loneliness, and how sometimes our mind can create a different perception than what is actually happening, you know.
Right.
Filling in the blanks. I would say another example for me is probably Final Fantasy X is one of the best examples, because in that game is got a very emotional story. It's a very fish out of
Right.
water situation where a guy is his whole world is destroyed by a giant monster, and he gets teleported 1,000 years into the future, and he has to go on this journey with this summoner as she goes from temple to temple and prays to these entities to have the strength to defeat this giant monster that still exists 1,000 years later. And he, being from the past and knowing nothing about these new ways, is slowly having to like learn and acclimate to, you know, this new life. And it really is probably one of the best examples of the hero's journey I mentioned earlier, because there's a lot of changes, there's growth, there's sacrifice, you know, the hero pays a heavy price by the end. It's really good.
Absolutely.
Something I would definitely put up there too. Yeah, you just got some like there's a lot of games I like that have, and movies and shows and stuff that have really good stories, but I'm trying to be objective in this episode and really only focus on the ones that really go above and beyond with their storytelling. Yeah. I would say another example would probably be Spec Ops: The Line, a third-person shooter game where you are, it's like, you're an American soldier with some people invading, I want to say like a war-torn Iraq or something. But basically, Spec Ops: The Line is about the mental health issues that come as a side effect of war. It deals with and brings awareness to the mental health issues that soldiers deal with. It's one of those games that has choices too that change the ending. There are things you can do, and the thing I remember most vividly about this game is when you're shooting a bunch of white phosphorus at what you think is enemies, and then after the fact, when the dust is cleared, you realize that you just murdered a town of innocent civilians.
Yes.
And that has stuck with me ever since I played that game. Like, that scene in particular really stuck with me.
Okay. So, you were explaining Spec Ops: The Line, and just the way it brings awareness to, like, PTSD and stuff like that. It made me think of one of my all-time favorite movies.
Okay.
Brothers, with Tobey Maguire and Jake Gyllenhaal.
I've talked about that's a good story.
I've talked about this on the pod before, and I'm going to talk about it now. It really does. It showcase there's a point in time where it showcases what war can actually do to a soldier. You can come back and not, like, you go overseas and not and just be perfectly normal. You experience something like Tobey Maguire's character did in Brothers, you come back a whole different person.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of movies that deal with some pretty heavy elements like that. There was a movie I watched that like I was made to watch in like group therapy stuff when I was younger, called Antoine Fisher, that was all about like someone being abused in a foster home, you know.
Yeah.
That I thought was a really it's a difficult watch, but it's a really good one. There's a movie called Extraordinary Measures with Brendan Fraser and Harrison Ford. It came out in 2010, and it's about a man on the corporate fast track with his beautiful wife and three children, and just as his career is taking off, he learns that his two youngest kids have a fatal disease, and he leaves his job and devotes himself to saving their lives, joining forces with Dr. Robert Stonehill, Harrison Ford, a brilliant but eccentric scientist, and together they battle the medical and corporate establishment, racing against time for a cure.
What movie is this?
Extraordinary Measures. I said that in the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah. And it came out in 2010. Really, really good story. Very emotional.
How have I never seen this?
I don't know, but I think you would like it. The tagline was, it's inspired by a true story, by the way. It's another true story
Okay.
thing. The tagline was, "Don't hope for a miracle, make one."
Okay.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's definitely, you got to go into that one with the right mindset though, because it's definitely a tearjerker. You know.
Okay.
Speaking of things you have to go into with the right mindset, I would consider the Martin Scorsese movie The Departed to be one of the best stories ever told, with one of the most amazing plot twists, quite frankly, and a phenomenal cast that's got Leonardo DiCaprio, it's got Jack Nicholson, it's got Matt Damon in it. It came out in 2006. And, I don't want to spoil the plot twists in it because they're so good, but basically it's a story about an undercover cop who's infiltrating a gang and trying to get more info on them, and there's, a whole lot of, betrayal and stuff, but basically Leonardo DiCaprio is a Boston cop. He goes undercover to infiltrate this organization, led by Frank Costello, who's Jack Nicholson, and as he gains the mob leader's trust, a career criminal named Colin Sullivan, played by Matt Damon, infiltrates the police department and reports on its activities to his syndicate bosses. So it's literally a story where a cop goes undercover in a gang to spy on them, while simultaneously a gang member goes undercover in the police department to spy on them. And it leads to some extremely crazy plot twists and some standoffs, and it is so fucking good.
That sounds good too.
One of the greatest movies I've ever seen, truly.
Another movie that falls under that category that I really...
Mark Wahlberg is in it too, and Martin Sheen. They're in it too.
Okay. Four Brothers.
Yes! Another Mark Wahlberg movie. Four Brothers was an amazing story.
Absolutely,
oh, God,
it was.
What a tearjerker when the one brother died, though. My God.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the one about the four foster brothers who come back when their foster mom passes away and then end up getting wrapped up in some gang activity while they're there and have to take care of business.
This is when their adoptive mother is gunned down in a store robbery. Four brothers decide to investigate the murder and find the killers themselves, but not all is what it seems.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that
was a good movie.
Mark Wahlberg, I want to say Terry Crews was in that one. Is one of the brothers, is that right?
No, Tyrese Gibson.
Tyrese Gibson, that's right. Tyrese Gibson, yeah, the other eccentric, muscly black guy.
Yes.
For some reason, I get him and Terry Crews confused sometimes, but Tyrese Gibson was the one in Fast and Furious.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm glad you reminded me of Four Brothers. Was Paul Walker in that?
No, he was not.
But speaking of a really good story Paul Walker was in, here's an underrated one a lot of people never talked about. I think I talked about it maybe in our Hidden Gems episode. I'm not sure, but there's a movie with Paul Walker called Running Scared. I think it came out in 2006.
I think I remember you talking about that at some point.
Yeah, it came out in 2006. Well, the best part of it is that there's a scene where he brutally punishes a couple that are both pedophiles, and it's a very satisfying scene.
Okay.
But it said Mafia flunky Joey Gazelle, played by Paul Walker, is ordered to dispose of the guns that killed a pair of policemen. He hides them in his basement, where they are found by Oleg, the kid from next door, who uses one to shoot his brutal stepfather, a Russian mobster. The boy runs off, and Joey pursues him into the criminal underworld, desperate to retrieve the incriminating weapon. Meanwhile, a corrupt detective is following Joey's trail with his own agenda. So basically, he is... he is a member of a gang that was ordered to dispose of some incriminating evidence, guns that were used to kill policemen. A kid next door steals one of the guns, murders his stepfather with it, and then takes off, so he's chasing after the kid to get the gun back, while simultaneously he's being chased by a corrupt detective. It's good.
Sounds good.
It's like a violent adult version of Catch Me If You Can. You know?
Okay.
Kind of like that, you know? Like I'm chasing you while someone's chasing me kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like, you know what that kind of thing always reminds me of is the old Tom and Jerry cartoons where Tom would be chasing Jerry, but then Spike would be chasing Tom, and all three of them are just going after each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what it reminds me of, that kind of thing.
Okay.
But, okay. Did you say video game?
Yeah, Until Dawn.
That's right. Okay. So for me, I guess video game is a tough choice, but I think I probably have to go with Soma, just because all that shit I said earlier. For storytelling, it's not my favorite game of all time. That's probably Final Fantasy X. But Soma, for storytelling, like some of the greatest storytelling, that one definitely stands out to me in that department.
Okay.
Just because no other game or movie or anything in the history of ever has kept me awake at night thinking about it like that one did.
Fair enough.
Like that stuck with me, you know? So yeah, that one just brings a lot of difficult questions to the table that really make you think. It is the kind of game I think should be dissected in professional philosophy classes. Like if you take philosophy as a college major, you should be made to play or watch that game and dissect its narrative.
Yeah.
I think that's very important. I would say for TV shows, you know, we didn't talk about it, but I've mentioned it before. I'm going to say Yellow Jackets is probably got one of the best stories in a TV show. One of my favorite stories, for sure. Like, I'm super... I haven't been this invested in a TV show in a long time. Like, the second season's over, and I can't wait to see what happens next. Like,
Fair enough.
I've been invested in a lot of shows, but that's one that, like I await the next episode with bated breath. Like it is, I haven't been that invested in a show since like the early time. Like remember in The Walking Dead when they ended on a huge cliffhanger and they were like, "Who's Negan gonna kill? Who's he gonna kill?" You know, like. I was super invested in that. This is probably the most invested I've been in any TV show since then.
Damn.
You know? And I would say I'm super invested in My Hero Academia too. Like that one keeps me going, but not like Yellow Jackets. There's just something about that show, man, and the way that the story is told that just has me absolutely hooked. Like it's just so good, so good.
Fair enough.
Probably one of the best TV shows ever made, quite frankly. Did you mention... Oh, yeah, you said book. You said Harry Potter, right?
Yeah.
Books for me, Lord of the Rings. That's an easy one.
Okay.
Hands down. They were... I read those books, I think, before I watched the movies, actually. So...
See, I didn't even know the books were a thing. All I remember seeing was an advertisement from Burger King about something about Lord of the Rings. And next thing I know, I'm seeing a movie trailer on the TV.
Yep. J.R.R. Tolkien, he was good friends with C.S. Lewis, writer of Narnia.
Mm-hmm. That was another series that was really good. The Chronicles of Narnia.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. So I did game, movie, TV show, or game, TV show, book, now movie. I gotta choose a movie, which is probably the hardest one.
Yeah, that's
honestly,
how it was for
because
me.
there's so many. Yeah, and it's hard for me in particular to pinpoint any one specific thing that stands out to me in movies as like the my favorite for story reasons, because I like a lot of movies for varying reasons.
Yeah.
But you know, cards on the table and all that. I would have to say Inception.
Okay.
We didn't talk about it,
No,
but
we didn't.
'cause there's a lot of fucking difficult. You know
There's a
what?
lot going on in that movie.
There is, yeah. You know, actually, I'm kind of teetering between Inception and The Green Mile. Actually,
Oh.
I think I've mentioned The Green Mile before. That was the one about the prisoner that has the power to cure people, and he's falsely in prison, being blamed for the death of these two girls. There's a lot of good emotional stuff in that one. A great performance by Tom Hanks too.
Yeah.
Speaking of great performances by Tom Hanks, I think Forrest Gump deserves a mention in this episode as being one of the best stories ever told.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I don't think we can, not mention that. I mean, there's only so much time and so many things to talk about.
Yeah.
So, you gotta, back to, we could have been here forever talking about things like Terminator, Back to the Future, Sweeney Todd, the first Avatar, which a lot of people may not agree with that, but I think it was revolutionary for its time. Stuff like that. The original story of Sleepy Hollow, not the movie, but the Butterfly Effect. The Butterfly Effect. The fuck, what's his name?
Ashton Kutcher.
The guy who did Punk'd, Ashton Kutcher. That was a good movie. Good story on that one, because that was one where he he learns he has the ability to rewind time, and that is one of the first examples I've seen of a time travel paradox where, the whole chicken and the egg scenario, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, in movies like this, the answer is yes.
Okay.
Because the whole idea of a paradox is that everything happens the way it does because it always had to happen that way. And that always happens with time travel shit. So as a kid, he had a lot of blackouts, and he remembers writing in his journal about these blackouts, but as adult he has no memory of what happened during these blackouts. Well, as an adult, he finds out that reading these journal entries, he has the ability to travel back in time to these moments, and so he finds out the reason that he blacked out during these moments as a kid is because he was being occupied by his future self in those moments. He was his future self traveling back in time was in the driver's seat, so the version of him that was back then was blacking out and not remembering anything. But you have to say, okay, well, then why did he have the blackouts to begin with if those happened before he time traveled? Well, the blackouts happened because he always time traveled. The two things coexist. The past and the future exist on a parallel line where it always happened. It just always was that way. And that's one of those things that you have to learn to kind of just accept when it comes to time travel. It's called a paradox. And I love paradoxes, and that's why I like some time travel shit. I don't like when it's used as a lazy way to write yourself out of a corner or bring characters back to life that died or whatever, but I do like when the story starts off that way and they do creative stuff with it like that. The Butterfly Effect is probably a prime example of one of the most creative versions of time travel I've ever seen. That understands the idea of a paradox and does it right,
Yeah.
Do you think The Dark Knight counts here because of Heath Ledger's performance, or do you think it needs more than just one good performance?
Biased, yes. I'm going to be biased here, and I'm going to say yes.
Okay, fair enough.
Because Heath Ledger's Joker is my favorite Joker.
Fair enough. Back when Zack Snyder was still good, he did some great movies too, like Sin City and 300. That I don't know if they're part of the greatest stories ever told, but I do think they deserve a mention. Notice that we didn't talk about any like superhero stuff or anything like that, and I think it's because everyone pretty much agrees that like superhero stories are very formulaic, so it's hard to consider them under the greatest stories ever told. But I do think that there are a couple of standouts and unique examples that do deserve some recognition. Maybe not the greatest stories ever told, but something like Guardians 3, for example, deserves recognition for being going above and beyond rather than just being a traditional superhero movie. That one was basically a big PSA for animal abuse. stuff like that. But most superhero movies are very formulaic, punchy, kicky, two evenly powered characters fighting each other at the end. You know, but yeah, we covered a lot here. So I think, what did I say for movies? Inception. It was between that and The Green Mile. I think I'm gonna go with Inception though, because I love the whole mind bending aspect of that movie. I love the whole concept of jumping inside someone's dreams and like literally the name of the movie, trying to incept an idea into their head. But also the fact that just because you're in someone's dream doesn't mean you're safe. Like it's got like the whole Freddy Krueger thing where you can die in real life or even fall into a coma if you're killed in the dream and stuff like that. And it's got some great plot twists, and it has an open-ended ending that like kind of hints towards what what it might be, but also kind of leaves it up to you to interpret, lets you do some of the work and kind of write your own ending. And I am a fan of that when it's done right, and I think it was done right in that movie. Sometimes I think it's lazy. Sometimes I think they just couldn't write an ending, and they basically said, make your own ending, But in this case, I think it has an actual ending. It just leaves, you on a little bit of a what if to give you something to chew on the way home from the movie theater,
Right.
And that I really liked about that one. So yeah, that one's definitely going on my favorite. I think favorite movie story. So
okay.
I wouldn't say it's my favorite movie of all time, but it's definitely probably, like, at least right now, being put on the spot and not having a whole lot of time to think about it, I would call it my favorite movie story.
Okay.
So yeah. But okay, I feel like we covered a lot of ground there. We talked about some great stuff with a lot of stories. And like every time we do an episode like this, there's obviously a lot of shit that we missed out on. Like, I forgot to mention Talk to Me in our 2023 year in review, but that's why I brought it up in this one. Because there's so much stuff and we only have so much time to talk about it. Some things are gonna slip through the cracks. Some things are gonna fly under the radar. And that is why I always encourage our audience to write in or leave a comment on the video.
Absolutely.
Because if there's something we forgot, tell us what we forgot.
Right.
Let us know what falls in these categories for you. So so feel free to write in Mr. Oversoul53 at gmail.com, MROVERSOUL53 at gmail.com, or leave a comment on the YouTube video if you're watching this on YouTube. Remember to click that like button as well. But I know most of you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, so that's fine. But also, you can follow me on the old Twitter, or what it used to be, at Oversoul53. I'm over there too, so, send me a DM or what have you.
Yeah, and you can find me at the website formerly known as Twitter at The Vaping Fiend, TikTok, the.vaping.fiend, and Twitch at The Vaping Fiend.
Yes. And like always, thank you all so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Have yourself a beautiful rest of the week, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.
Bye.